This man is Ryan Bingham, a professional staff in a service company hired by another company to fire their employees. This service is popularly used because the company doesn't want to face demands for employees to be fired from work. Ryan, of course, moved from one city to another and from one company to another to fire the employees. It wasn't uncommon for him to get cursed at or threatened, but because he had been doing this job for years, he already had a strong mentality and could overcome problems that might exist. Because of his job, he could spend over 300 days only on business trips for a year. He usually just brought a suitcase and his member cards from hotels, airlines, and car rentals. Besides working for his company, Ryan is also a book writer. Between his busy schedule, he sometimes will also be a speaker or motivator. Ryan is a man who didn't believe in commitment. He is a person who doesn't have a goal to live with a family in the future. Even Kara, his sister, never considered him as part of his family. One day, during his business trip, he met Alex, a woman he met in Dallas. Alex is a woman who, just like Ryan, spent her time traveling on business trips. Half of her life she spent on taking flights. The two of them even bragged about who had the most member cards from hotels or airlines. Thanks to their similarity, they quickly became close friends and even ended up becoming a friend with benefits to satisfy their urges. Before they parted ways, they matched schedules, in case they might have the same schedule in the same city so they could meet again. Ryan then returned to Omaha, the city where he lived. When he was at the airport, he was called by Kara, who invited him to discuss the wedding of their sister Julie. She said that she had sent a package for Ryan as Julie requested to her. When he arrived at his apartment, his neighbor handed over the package. The package contained a portrait of his sister and her fiancé. Julie wanted him to take it everywhere. He went and took photos of it with the background of the city. The next day, when Ryan arrived at the office, there was a meeting with his boss named Craig. At the meeting, Craig introduced a new employee named Natalie. She was allowed to present an idea which Craig said was very good. In front of senior employees, Natalie introduced the latest way to do their job by using a video conference. She also demonstrated this method in front of everyone. Craig thought it was a breakthrough because the company wouldn't need to send the employees to travel anymore and might be able to save the accommodation costs. All they needed was just the internet. After the meeting, Ryan protested to Craig. He thought Natalie didn't know anything about reality when they were doing their job. Natalie at that time said that she was a graduate of psychology, so she knew what would happen when people were fired from their jobs. Listening to that, Ryan then told Natalie to show her ability to fire people. She accepted the challenge and tried to fire Ryan, but unfortunately, her way failed to convince Ryan. Craig then ordered Ryan to take Natalie with him on a business trip so that she could learn from Ryan. He initially refused the idea because she might slow him down, but he had no option but to obey his boss. At home, just like usual, Ryan packed his stuff for his trip, but this time with an additional item, the printed cardboard from his sister. At the airport, Ryan checked inefficiently. He then saw Natalie, who had just arrived, while carrying a large and impractical suitcase. He then forced her to buy a smaller suitcase with wheels that could fit in the cabin. Ryan wasn't hesitant to throw away things that he thought Natalie might not need. On this trip, Ryan wanted to teach Natalie to save time. He then told Natalie the benefits he got from traveling. He knew the most efficient way to save more time. Long story short, after arriving and taking a break, Ryan and Natalie took their first job in St. Louis. He went to the appointed company and started doing their job. Ryan told Natalie to pay attention and listen. At first, she seemed to be able to follow, but when an employee named Bob was fired, she couldn't hold back and decided to speak and told Bob to take the positive side of his dismissal. Hearing that made Bob angry because there was nothing positive about firing someone. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to provide for his family if he was fired. Natalie couldn't improve to ease the situation, much different from Ryan, who could read the atmosphere and adapt to it. He then read Bob's curriculum vitae and found out that he used to be a chef. Ryan said that maybe it was Bob's chance to fulfill his long-lost dream as a chef. Finally, Bob left from there, still disappointed but with less anger. While resting in his hotel room, Ryan saw his sister's wedding invitation and realized that he had things to do, so the next morning, with help from Natalie, he took a photo of his sister's picture as requested. They continued to Wichita, a different place but with the same task, to fire some employees. At that time, they faced an angry employee who even slammed the chair because he didn't accept the dismissal. Ryan casually said that sometimes employees who were fired needed a release. After a while, Natalie asked Ryan to let her do the dismissal because she was fed up doing nothing but listening to him and doing nothing. She then faced a woman named Karen. She offered her 3 months of salary and 6 months of health benefits and so on to compensate for her dismissal, but Karen casually said that she had prepared her plan to jump off the bridge and end her life. Hearing that hit her hard. She was afraid that if she fired her, she would end up killing herself. Ryan tried to calm her down by saying that a lot of employees that he fired tend to say the same thing to him, and that it's only natural for someone about to be fired to say something that doesn't make sense. Ryan told her not to think about it because it was part of their job. They continued their business trip to Kansas City. They both came to an office that was on the verge of bankruptcy and did what was asked. They then went to Des Moines. At that time, Natalie fired so many employees that it seemed like she was accommodating so much sadness from the unfortunate people she met. When they were in Miami, Natalie followed Ryan's agenda as a motivational speaker. As usual, Ryan talked about how relationships with other people are the hardest elements in human life. All argumentation and secrets will eventually burden people, so there was no point in having a commitment and carrying that burden. After the seminar, Natalie asked why he didn't want to get married. Ryan still insisted that marriage has no purpose and convinced Natalie that he would not marry for the rest of his life. Natalie tried to change Ryan's mind and talked about love and togetherness, but Ryan easily refuted the point because many married couples are divorced and had a messy life. When they arrived at the hotel, Ryan said that it didn't matter not committing, because in the end, everyone will die alone and that it was just a matter of choice. Hearing what Ryan just said made Natalie break into tears because that day she had just been dumped by her boyfriend. Ryan tried to calm her down. Turned out, Alex was also there. Then, accompanied by Alex, they listened to Natalie, who had just had her heart broken. Unlike Ryan, Alex, who is also a woman, was able to advise Natalie. Because she listened to the advice of two people who live alone, Natalie then decided to marry her job, just like Ryan and Alex. The next day in the morning, Alex had to continue her business trip. That day, Ryan and Alex once again had to part. When Natalie helped Ryan to take photos of his sister's picture, Natalie asked about Ryan and Alex. She couldn't believe they were just friends. Ryan casually said that she had no chemistry with Alex. Besides, the two of them were only there to satisfy each other. Natalie thought of Ryan as a jerk for doing such a thing to Alex. For Natalie, a woman like Alex should be allowed to have a real relationship. Natalie said that Alex managed to change Ryan's life choice to be alone. She told him to grow up and think. The two of them continued their trip to Detroit. As soon as they arrived at their destination, they were greeted by Craig via video conference. Ryan and Natalie had been doing their job in the last few weeks, so Craig thought that it was the right time for them to try using the online dismissal program that Natalie proposed before. Natalie finally tried the online dismissal for the first time, and her client was a person who turned out to be in the next room, while Craig would monitor her work from his office. Natalie tried to maintain her composure while trying to explain to the man that he was being fired. As soon as the man realized it, he cried and couldn't believe the bad news. 17 years of contributing vanished in thin air. Upon seeing the man, there was a moral burden for Natalie, knowing that someone was confused about the continuation of his life because she just fired him. Sadly, there was nothing she could do because it was part of her job. Craig found that the online method worked flawlessly and thought that it was time to change. He then asked Ryan and Natalie to return to Omaha to continue their work from the office. At the airport, Natalie apologized to Ryan because of what he said about him before. Suddenly, just before they took the flight, Ryan changed his plan and took another flight to meet Alex. When they finally meet, Ryan invited her to come with him to his sister's wedding because he didn't want to be alone. Alex accepted his invitation. The two of them finally went to Milwaukee to attend Julie's wedding. At the hotel where the wedding would be held, Ryan and Alex met Kara. She was surprised to see her brother, who never believed in love and commitment, suddenly came with a date. At that moment, Kara mentioned that she and her husband were on the verge of divorce. Shortly after, Ryan and Alex met Julie, and just like Kara when she saw Ryan coming on a date, Julie thought that Ryan had given up on his loneliness. Julie then introduced her fiancé named Jim. They were happy because Ryan had come all the way and took the time to come to their wedding. Ryan then gave her the pictures he took for her and put them on a point where he took the picture on a map. Julie said that maybe after her wedding, they wouldn't be able to afford to go on a honeymoon because they have to save money. So even though they couldn't travel, they still had the pictures that Ryan took for them. It was a unique and interesting idea. After dinner, Ryan offered to walk Julie down the aisle because their father had passed away, but unfortunately, Julie had asked their uncle for the job. Ryan was sad to hear that he couldn't do that, but he was good at hiding his sadness. The next morning, Ryan invited Alex to visit his old school. He then introduced his past self when he was a high school student. After they finished, Alex said that she was happy with the time they spent there. While chatting with Alex, Kara suddenly called and said that there was a problem, so Ryan immediately went to the church. It turned out that Jim, Julie's fiancé, was nervous and changed his mind, so one of them had to talk to him. Since Kara couldn't talk to him because her marriage itself was a mess, likewise with Ryan, who never believed in marriage and commitment. Kara insisted that Ryan should be the one to talk to Jim because he had never been present for his family and that it was the right time for him to make up for it. Ryan, who loved his sister, then decided to talk to Jim. He found out that the reason Jim wanted to cancel the marriage was basically that he was worried about living together, having children, watching their children grow, become old, and finally die. For him, all of it was pointless. It was easy for Ryan to make him cancel the marriage because he is a specialist in that, but at that time, he had to convince Jim that marriage was the most beautiful thing. Ryan asked Jim to remember all the good things he had gone through in his life. Ryan said that everything will be better if they have someone else with them. Because of that conversation, Jim finally realized his mistake and then returned to meet Julie. He apologized and decided to continue to carry out their wedding. That day, for the first time in his life, Ryan instead united two people for a commitment, completely against his principle. The marriage went smoothly. Julie finally got married and everyone was happy, including Ryan. Shortly after, Ryan and Alex went to the airport to return to their respective cities and hoped to meet again at another time. The problem was Ryan was no longer required to go on a business trip, and maybe this was the last time they would meet. Upon arrival at Omaha, Ryan had to get used to the loneliness in his apartment. The next day, at the office, Natalie showed Ryan the employees who were doing a beta test of the new program. Later, this way of working would be implemented starting this month, so Ryan had to get used to the new working system. One day, Ryan had an agenda as a speaker. This time, he became a speaker at a forum attended by many people. As usual, he explained his philosophy, but this time, his heart was the opposite of what he always said. At that time, Ryan decided to go to the airport and travel to Chicago. When he got there, Ryan hurriedly went to an address that turned out to be Alex's. Ryan thought that maybe he was ready for a commitment. For the first time in his life, he would express his feelings. For the first time in his life, he fell in love, but alas, when he managed to meet Alex, Ryan was surprised that Alex was living with a family. Ryan then left and felt stupid for going against his life principles, and sadly, the results were not what he expected. When he was about to return to Omaha, Alex called him and asked his intention to come to her house. Ryan blamed Alex for not telling him that she was married. Alex thought that he already understood that their relationship was just an escape from reality. Alex thought that Ryan was a break and an escape. Alex also asked what Ryan wanted, but upon being faced with that question, he couldn't even say anything and chose to hang up the phone. Ryan thought about Alex's question before, but he really didn't know what he wanted right now. When he was on the flight, one of the flight attendants announced that one of the passengers there had succeeded in reaching a 16 million kilometers trip, who turned out to be Ryan. He was given awards by the flight crew and a limited club member card by the captain because he was one of the youngest people who managed to reach that record. The special card itself is super limited, where only 7 existed in the world. He was happy to get this achievement because, with the card, he could go wherever he wanted. One day at the office, Craig came to see Ryan. He informed Ryan that Karen, an employee whom Natalie fired before, ended up committing suicide by jumping from a bridge. Hearing this, Ryan immediately thought about Natalie because she was the one who fired Karen. Craig then said that Natalie had resigned from her position because she felt guilty about herself, and since Natalie resigned, the video call system would also be evaluated again. The office would again send their employees for business trips to carry out their duties, including Ryan. To help Natalie, Ryan then wrote a letter of recommendation that could be used by her to get a new job. Meanwhile, Natalie returned to San Francisco and tried to find a job there. Thanks to Ryan's recommendation letter, Natalie finally got a new job while Ryan was back doing his job just like before. In the end, Ryan had become an unhappy man, completely different from the one he usually was. His personality had changed completely, and he once again sought a fresh start in his life. The movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel.